I want to talk today about some of the emerging innovative solutions we're seeing in senior living design today and some of the key drivers around that as well. Just as a quick overview, and because I want to actually give some context to our last 20 years offshore and how that's actually affecting a lot of the work and a lot of the local solutions that are emerging at the moment. As a practice, we've grown to one of the top 10 in Australia. We're now the second largest practice in the world in designing senior living facilities on the back of a lot of the work we're doing in Asia. The areas that we work in up and down the eastern seaboard, as well as Jakarta, Hong Kong, and we've been in Shanghai for the last 2 or 3 years. And the specialisations we work in, and we're seeing a lot more cross-fertilisation of these specialties at the moment, are senior living, hospitals. The large-scale hospitals we're doing are mainly offshore. Commercial development, moving a lot into retail developments with the Safeway, the Bunnings, the Woolworths, where in fact we're seeing a lot of work cross borders with them in retirement living at the moment as well. Education and communities are doing a lot of work in with universities, retail and resort and leisure at the moment. So one of the phenomena I want to talk about today is one that we've termed glocalisation. And that is where a lot of the global trends are now coming back and we're informing the work we're doing here within Australia. For the last, for 15 years, we would have exported most of our specialities offshore. For the last 5 years, we're seeing a lot of the work that's emerging over there is now being able to inform and help change some of the design trends within the work we're doing here. Now, the 3 areas I want to actually talk about today is the customer, the product and technology, and how those 3 areas are being changed by some of the global trends out there. Let's talk about the customer and getting a deeper understanding of not only the current customer, but the future customer from our point of view. 4 years ago, as a company, I involved neuroscientists into our architectural practice. I wanted an understanding of what our vision, what our mission, and more deeply how we were going to be working together in the future. Because as a design practice, the design industry is being disrupted at the moment and we have to change with that. And so that's why we brought this group in. Equally, I've now actually brought this group in, same group that have worked with our company for the last 4 years. I've brought them into the senior living space as well. Understanding more about the customer. And what we're looking at now is mapping the needs of the 80-year-old, the 70-year-old and the 60-year-old, and looking very what's common between those groups. And the things we're finding that are common are things like attachment, engagement, familiarity, safety, spirituality, all the base areas that people are wanting, the basic needs of people at that age. What's uncommon and what's emerging at the moment is the level of adventure. And so we're doing a lot more work in what we're calling the level of adventure in helping design communities for the future and find where that means. And where that's moving us to is a thing known as empathy mapping, understanding the map of the individual before we even start to consider designing for them, understanding what those key needs are. And since '89, we've been collaborating with Singapore University. For the last 4 years, we've been assisting them with their final year design students over there, especially in the areas of dementia design and design for people as they age. And to that extent, we've worked with their department head, a guy named John Fung, who's designed and developed and just put out this book on dementia design source book. And what it is it's a huge empathy map. And so at a very fundamental level, what we've looked at are what are the needs of people with dementia. And as a designer, we know that if we can design for someone with dementia, we've got every other base covered in an aged care spectrum. And so let me just explain the empathy map for you and how it works. It's very simple. In the middle of it is actually the person, so it starts with the individual. And what we look here are, in this situation, what are the key issues of ageing? And they're the natural effects of ageing, cataracts, glaucoma becomes a key issue, the direct effects of Alzheimer's as we age. We know that the dementias here in Australia, 70% of them are actually Alzheimer related. declining cognitive skills, the issues of frontal lobe damage and motor cortex damage. These are the key areas around how people age. What that then does is it moves in, from our point of view, is what is the impact of ageing on senses? And here we look at the cognitive impact, the visual impact, the physical impact, and the behavioural and psychological impact as well. The last part of the cheese out there is then physically, well, what does that mean from a behavioural point of view? What does that mean those people are doing? Here we know there's a loss of fine motor skills, difficulty in dressing, loss of gait, disability in organising body movement, involuntary movements, a tendency to look downwards, incontinence, all things that from a design perspective are very important to understand. And so we've got a pie chart that tells us a lot of information about the individual. Equally, we're now doing this for retirement living people as well. Now, what that then means is that I'm able to put a filter over the top of this. Our design filter that we would put over the top of it, we start looking at what this means from an environmental point of view, from a wayfinding point of view, access and safety, ambience, finishes, furnishing and technology. Where this becomes exciting is that what you're able to do is then put other filters over the top of this. You're able to then put on what are the goods and services we're able to provide? What are the other things as an organisation we should do as a company to be able to even reorganise ourselves, because this is about the customer. So it's a much deeper understanding of who the customer is and where the customer is going to be in the future and what their physical needs and requirements are as well. So empathy mapping, this one is for dementia, but we're getting a lot more into the empathy mapping of the 60, 70 and 80-year-old and where their level of adventure is for the future. In terms of the product, the areas I want to talk about are social infrastructure, the urban environment, and what we're seeing in terms of cross-typologies of building emerging out there. As a company, and one of the reasons I spoke about us earlier in the specialities, that we've worked many years in a siloed arrangement in that our retail guys would work over here, our aged care guys would work over there, our hospital guys work in the next room. We're seeing a lot more working between the groups at the moment. So when in fact I look at all the social infrastructure components there, when I put them all together, it creates a village, it creates a township. And the larger scale work we're now embarking on within Asia is not starting with a building, but starting with an urban fabric and starting with how we're going to design a city. So the connection between these things become quite important.